What's up, guys? We're here to talk about the newest episode of The Mandalorian. It's Friday, and oh wait, whoops, this isn't the right podcast. Damn it. All right, I'm just kidding. This is Talkin TV. We're back. It's another week. We're covering another movie, and I am Dom, the one and only movie nerd, back once again with my faithful co-host, Chris Ivanko. Chris, how you doing?
What's going on, guys? Peace and love, said Ringo Starr.
Peace and love, indeed. But see, Chris, we're not alone tonight.
You're not?
No, just like the Beatles, there's two more people with us tonight.
Yep. Well, I mean, I wasn't necessarily going for the Beatles. I was going for a different thing. But yeah, and in addition to having an actual kind of crew with us tonight, I like that. It's a little bit of a throwback because this is also a little bit of a reunion special here.
It is to our famed episode, which got a grand total, overwhelming total of 14 views.
Our
when we
last
covered
episode on our original podcast before I departed for the Great White North.
Yeah.
And now I'm back.
It was on none other than Stranger Things. And what are we talking about tonight? Something equally as fun as Stranger Things.
Yes,
Dom,
most definitely.
just like how Stranger Things was a ride that tugged on your heartstrings, it made you feel happy, it made you laugh, it made you cry, it made you feel everything. This movie did the same thing.
Absolutely,
In
100%. Noah
the
Baumbach
same
really
inviting
knows
way.
how to tug on those strings in just the way that makes you feel things. One of the things you actually...
just like in Madagascar 3.
What are the things you actually want
Just
to
like
be
in
feeling?
Madagascar
That's
3.
a whole different story, but I guess we should probably get to the introductions as to who's sitting
What
here.
are we talking about and who are we talking with, Dom?
Well, we're first to who we're talking with. So to my right, a familiar voice. You guys might recognize it. Johnny, introduce yourself.
Hello, I'm Johnny Manna. Thank you for having me. Happy to be here after the Stranger Things episode, which I believe was in spring of 2017.
A long time ago, yeah.
And the Once Upon a Time in Hollywood episode. And the It Chapter 2 episode.
Well, no, I meant with this specific group. I'm really happy that episode with Stranger Things did so well that we were able to not record another episode until now. It just kept us going this whole time.
It's not, we were gonna do it either way, but the fact that you guys tuned in made this happen sooner.
Most definitely. And
so thank you.
And to my left, to Chris's right, in the center of
My
sorts,
right, his left.
another
in the center.
returning face. What's up, Andrew? How you been?
I've been all right. My name's Andrew, and I'm on another podcast, but I'm on this one, so don't tell my other podcast. Also, if we're talking about The Mandalorian, I haven't seen it, so spoiler-free only.
Ooh, damn.
I haven't seen it either.
I don't know who
unfortunate, 'cause
Baby
this
Yoda
is-
is or
It's
how
all right.
Yoda
Just
had a baby after
disappointing,
being
'cause
dead,
this
but I
is-
can't wait to
this is
find out.
spoiler-filled, so...
Just hit the comments if you want Dom's Disney Plus login.
I am giving it out
He
free
literally,
of charge.
he literally
'cause guess
said,
what?
why haven't you just given it out?
Seriously,
me,
because
yeah.
guess what? Disney can't do shit about protecting it.
They're
But
coming
so,
here.
How about this? You share this show on your social media account. We'll share Dom's
I
Disney
will give out. I will
Plus.
happily pay the $6.99 a month
your
just so that
DMs.
all of you can get Disney Plus without having to pay for it. Because at this point, nobody should have to pay for Disney. But Chris,
But listen, we digress. We're all obviously really good friends. We enjoyed a nice restaurant meal before this. There's 5 guys in our area who make the most delicious burgers. And we just been having a great night. And so in the spirit of that, we can get very off topic very quickly. We're all good friends. We're a couple guy dudes that are friends. And
A
so,
couple guy dudes.
Yeah,
Listen,
a couple
what's
guy
better
dudes,
than
a couple
this?
dude guys.
Dudes
I'm
being
also pretty
guys.
sure a couple
Dudes
refers to
being guys.
two.
Bros.
There's 4 of us here. I believe the technical term is a few.
Listen, I'll explain it. A couple of bro dudes. Bro dudes 2, couple of 2 bro dudes 4.
I love you,
I
guy,
see.
man.
Multiplication.
You're my bro guy.
Didn't you go to
Times
college, bro?
table.
I shouldn't have
Can
to
we just
explain
talk about
this.
Cheaper by the Dozen already?
Yes, that's because that's clearly what we're here to talk about.
Oh, man.
That
that's
is the bonus
next,
episode of a lifetime.
Listen, if the 4 of us are not talking about Cheaper by the Dozen, the next
By
time
the end of
the
the
4
night.
of us
Dom,
are
By the end of the
Dom,
night.
I am declaring
By-
right now
by
we are having
2020.
these
We're
guys back in
having
the
these
new
guys
year.
back for the Cheaper by the Dozen bonus episode that we will have in
Yes.
New Year.
Bitch rule.
Yes,
Absolutely.
February is a dead month. We got content for
February. You
February.
mean January?
Right, sorry.
Yeah,
I
you're
don't
fine.
know.
They're all
Anyway,
dead.
so Chris, well, in the spirit again of continuing of what we've been, I would say, attempting to do for the last couple of months, I'd say succeeding so far. We once again watched a movie. You know, whether that movie was necessarily the movie that we probably should have watched. You know, the ideal kind of getting together and watching a movie on a Friday night. Chris, what movie was that?
Well, before we get into that, I just want to let anyone out there who's struggling with being a creative, with being an artist, and I'm not going to tell you about Anchor, although you guys all probably thought it
We
was
already had to
going
listen
there.
to that one.
You guys all
I mean, I could
thought,
tell them about Anchor.
Not yet. But here's the thing. Success is what you make of it. So right now, this is successful. We've lit the room. We've mic'd up the people. We've gotten everyone together. We've had a great night, which to me is a success. Watching Marriage Story. See what I did there? This movie was loaded. and I don't want to start.
say
I
the
want to say
least.
so
Loaded
much, but
like a baby's diaper.
you know
is
what?
Loaded.
In the spirit of being good host, Tom, if you're cool with it,
Of course.
why don't one of you guys wants to take it? If not, I can. But
I
this,
mean,
like
I
you have a
definitely
lot of thoughts,
I've
Andrew.
got some thoughts on this movie. This was the first time I watched a movie and didn't want to forget what I was thinking, so I wrote some things down.
Whoa.
wow. Okay, so Andrew, please
It
start us
starts
off.
positive.
Guys, we gotta mark this down. This is a special.
I know,
Andrew
I know.
wrote some stuff down
I don't
after
even
a movie.
I don't
This is
even watch
insane.
movies. I could probably make Dom cry with the list of movies I haven't seen, but we'll get to
Oh, I
that.
already have. Trust me, I already have.
It started positive.
He already.
Whoever was in charge of shooting the movie and what it looked like did a great job.
Robbie Ryan, DP of last year's The Favorite.
Yeah, that dude's really good at DP. He really made this movie look so good. Like, I don't know. I don't know. I'm a sucker for cool shots, and I feel like there were a lot of cool shots. Also, Adam Driver is an incredible actor. And if he was half as good at being a Marine as he was an actor, I feel very safe with our military.
Was he a
he's a really
Marine?
good.
Yes,
oh
he
yeah,
was.
I was
a
going
Marine
to
and
make that
enlisted
joke
right
because
after
I thought
9/11.
everyone knew.
He's got a TED Talk that's called From Marine to Actor.
That's pretty cool. I didn't even know
Yeah,
that.
I haven't
He
watched
served
it
for
yet,
5
but
years,
I'm sure
yeah.
it's pretty good. He was really good. Scarlett Johansson was pretty good, but I also feel like she just does like the same thing in every movie. It's
Okay,
just
what else
like,
has she been in? I don't want to cut you off, but
Besides every
I
Marvel movie ever made.
I just saw her in Jojo Rabbit, and Jojo
Yes.
Rabbit was really good.
Terrific
but
in
she
that.
was the same thing, just with an accent.
Could
She
not
was in-
disagree more.
She was
saying.
she was also in Eight-Legged Freaks,
Yeah,
which was a movie
she
about
was.
giant spiders from
She
the
was.
early 2000s.
No, listen,
Great
it's
movie.
like I just feel
yeah,
like
that's
I'm not
right.
listen.
That
I'm
was
not
like one
saying
of her
she's a
first
bad
movies.
actress.
Is that the same year? that
'Cause
she
I think
did
she's a
Lost in
good
translation.
I don't know.
I think she's a good actress, but like, there's just something about her that I'm just like, she's just doing what she does in every movie because she's Scarlett Johansson, and like,
Do you think that's a
She
result?
was not doing what she did in Avengers.
Andrew, do you think
okay,
that's a result
that's
of
Avengers.
her? Do you think that's a result of her being so overexposed because we have seen so much of her give one type of a performance as Black Widow in the Avengers movies? And that's not even a thing like shooting a shot against her. That's just
I
like
mean, maybe, but I feel like she's also like, yeah, she's in a lot of movies, but I feel like she's in so many different movies that, like I feel like I don't have that opinion of like, I don't know. I'm drawing a blank on every actress that I've ever seen in a movie now, but I feel like there are tons of actresses that are like, in every movie also, but I'm not like, Laura Dern was in this movie and I've seen her in a few movies like these past few years, and I wasn't like, oh, there's Laura Dern again being Laura Dern. I was like, there's Laura Dern being a
you want to know what's
freaking
funny?
bitch.
You want to know what's funny? That's actually the exact thought that I had
About Laura Dern?
About Laura Dern, but not like in the exact same context because the
Yeah,
whole
yeah,
thing
yeah.
was so. Just to give a little bit of context in terms of my thoughts in this movie, because hi, I'm the host here. What's it called? No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, we've heard you talk enough,
So, fun fact: this is actually not the first time I watched this movie. This is technically the movie's official debut on Netflix worldwide.
Today?
Today, yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
that's
Today,
cool.
I mean,
Today being
technically 3 o'clock in the
New
morning.
Year's
but-
Eve at 11 p.m.
Yes, definitely. No, but yeah, technically at 3
not.
o'clock in the morning when everything usually drops on Netflix. But no, I watched this movie when it debuted in theaters in New York City about a month ago. And for a movie that was being touted as the movie to most likely win Best Picture and Best Actor and get nominated for pretty much every major award, I wasn't that impressed.
No,
Yeah.
definitely not impressed.
Like, don't get me wrong, it's a well-made movie.
Oh, yeah.
And there's definitely a lot to take away from it. A lot of good things. But just overall, like, my overall thoughts, I'm like, this is one of those Oscar movies that I watch where, A, even though obviously it's not, I get it, but A, it feels like it's made to win Oscars.
Yes.
And
I don't know.
B,
oh my God, yes.
I'm like, this is going to be the one Best Picture nominee where I'm just like, okay, sure, that got nominated. Great. I know why it did. It's not one of my favorites of the year. Which sucks because this is probably one of the first years in a long time where a majority of the movies that are going to get nominated for Best Picture, I actually really, really enjoyed, and a majority of them are in my top 10 favorites of the year.
I don't know. I feel like Adam Driver is the only, like, not the only good thing about this movie, but if he wasn't in this movie, I don't see how it could be nominated for an Oscar unless you can be nominated for multiple Oscars for your movie looking really good.
I like the
then
message
being
of the
bad.
movie too. I like the message
Okay,
in
well,
terms
what
of
was
being,
the message,
It was
though?
I took it as being very like pro traditional family and pro like divorce being like not a good thing, and that like it's parents should stay together for the kid. I like that message.
Well, I'll counter that with this. If that was the message, I feel like that's a really kind of dick message.
Why?
Especially in
because
our
they were
modern
obviously
day.
at such odds that it was
Yeah, because
literally
it was
almost
basically-
killing them at
They
one
were
point.
yeah,
Literally.
they were like
Supposedly.
torn, yeah, they were
Not
like
saying
torn
I agree with him,
between-
but I think that's why
I
he
meant for
said
the
that.
kid in terms of like the
Yeah,
fact
no,
that
but-
a lot of times they weren't even really talking about
Yeah.
the kid. It's like when you get married, it's supposed to be like, okay, now it's
Yeah.
not just about us. It's
but
about the kid we have.
also I'm not saying this is what you're saying, but it sounds like if you're saying that the message of the movie is like divorce is bad and like traditional family is good, it's like then it should have been that they shouldn't have gotten divorced, in which case they would have like probably killed each other, and then the kid would have been even worse off.
Exactly.
I mean, my parents are divorced, and there were certain points in that movie where like I felt a certain way, and I was like, all right, this is definitely because like I've lived this, and now I'm watching it happen in a movie, and I was like, now I don't know if part of the reason why I don't like the scene is because I don't like divorce, or if because I don't like this movie. But there were some points where I was like, as a child of divorce, I just feel like this is just like
definitely a little bit of a blending
dramatic.
I didn't mean like what they were doing in the movie. I mean, as an audience member, you don't like what's going on, and and you're thinking like, why are they not focusing more on the kid right now? Even like during a lot of their big intense fights, I don't remember specifically, but I feel like a lot of times they weren't even really talking about Henry. Maybe they would mention him a little bit.
I felt like this movie would have been better without Henry, but at the same time, I realized that like he there
is
because
necessary.
Yeah, because it's like they're going through their own thing, and then like Henry is just that added like. Oh, yeah, by the way, you also have to figure this entire other human being's life out.
Kind of.
Because it's like, it would have been, like, easier if there was no kid, because then it's like, all we have to do is break up. But now that there's a kid, it's like, well, it's not as easy as just, like, breaking up. And I get that.
So I hate what YouTube has done to the criticism of film, like plot device and how everyone thinks they, like, understand everything. I'm not trying to do that when I say this, but do you guys think he was more of a character or more of, like, a catalyst, a plot device, even though I say I don't want to say what I'm doing, but because I felt like he actually had more importance than you guys are making him out to be. I actually thought he was pretty well acted for being a child of such an age.
Well,
but
I also have a question in response to your question.
Sure.
Your question of, is he a character or is he a plot device? Besides him becoming better at reading, spoiler alert, did he grow in the movie at all? Like from the beginning when his parents like just decided to get divorced, and then all the way at the end when they are divorced and like seemingly kind of starting to become happy, like did he grow as a person or change at all besides being a better reader?
No.
I would say in response to that it's a situation of both, where yes, when I'm watching him, even with the dialogue, which I'll get into a little bit later, but is probably my biggest problem with the movie, I still do believe that I'm like watching a legitimate kid. Like, I'm never annoyed by him.
I think the kid did a great job.
But for the purposes of the plot, yes, I absolutely agree. He is kind of just a tool. Like, literally, but that's the point. Like, it's literally the same as a movie that is very, very similar to this, which is Kramer versus Kramer. 40-year anniversary of that movie, by the way. Obviously a much different movie, but kind of uses in the same way, where the whole thing is the on-screen representation that is literally the symbol of their crumbling marriage, and literally the only reason why they're even still like communicating with each other is that kid. So the answer to that question is, I would say both.
Yeah, it's honestly pretty ironic when you think about it, because a lot of their fights revolved around them accusing the other person of being like insufficiently self-sacrificing, when they kind of both were like pretty bad at that, to be honest. They were both just like neglecting Henry throughout the entire thing.
And it's funny that you mentioned that, because I would definitely agree that that's probably one of the film's strengths, is that unlike, I feel like, a lot of other divorce... Again, that's tricky because I don't actually know how many films have covered the subject. Believe it or not, it's actually one of the few areas of film that I'm actually not that experienced with. But I would say that that one of the high points of this film is that it did do a very good job of splitting that sort of tension between the two of them, of where you're not necessarily rooting for one over the other, at least from an acting and like an emotional perspective.
Well,
writing-wise, that's a different story.
Yeah, you can go, Chris, but I definitely have something to say about the whole like you're not necessarily rooting for one over the other.
So the movie did something that I was very happy with. At first, it comes out and you think that, okay, this is like split time, because she reads what she wrote down about him, that their moderator at first told them, right? And then he reads the same thing, and there's like, the montage scenes, and you see their happy life and all that. And then it very quickly goes into like almost like a 20-minute sequence of just Scarlett. And I'm like, oh, so this is from only the woman's point of view. But then you get another 20 minutes of Adam Driver. And so I think like because the movie bounces back and forth so much, it does actually do a really good job of showing that like there are casualties of war on both sides. I do think, however, that the kid was in the movie too much, but he did a great job acting by being given so little to work in and also being so young, because all he really ever was told to do was go play with his toys or come here. And I guess that helped, because like that one scene with the gate closing when he did go back to help her despite all the shit she was putting him through, and they all pushed the gate together as a family, but who's on one side of the gate and who's on the other?
I was about to say, just like the very on-the-nose symbolism of, they're literally being divided.
And that was definitely on the nose, but I like it. it because the acting in this movie, I think, is what... I don't think this was a bad film by any means. I actually think it was a really good film, like really good, like borderline amazing to me, because I felt so uncomfortable watching this movie the entire time. It is very rare that I have to remind myself that these people are acting right now because of how believable the performance was. Like, I have never seen someone cry as good as Adam Driver did when she was in his apartment for the first time and they got into that fight. So where I'm going with this is, you needed the kid because it accented the performance, but I do think that some of the cutting room floor, the editing of this film, he could have been in there a little less, and we could have gotten a little more of the situation, and I think that would have helped it all around.
Well, I think it's more like, it's not so much that the movie would be better without him, because obviously, like, they're a family that's getting divorced, so, like, you need the kid, so he's important, but I guess it's more like the execution of the kid was just kind of lackluster. But before, when Dom was saying, like, they don't really pit you against one or the other, I feel like it was more just like they had scenes where it was like, okay, this, like, in this part, Scarlett's the asshole because, like, she's like, it seems like, oh, he was like, oh yeah, you're gonna go make this show, and then we're gonna go back to New York and everything's gonna be cool, and then she's like, nah. And, like, also, I'm getting a lawyer, even though we said we weren't going to. And you're like, oh, wow, Scarlett's being kind of a bitch. And then it goes back, and then it's like, oh, but he never cared about what I wanted. And then now he, like, you know, yells at Henry and does all this other stuff. So now Adam's the asshole. And I felt like there was never a point where you're like, oh, they're both assholes. It was just like, oh, right now he's the asshole. Oh, now she's the asshole. And it was just, like, only a back and forth and never just like oh, we're both assholes.
It definitely felt like it was a situation where the emotions definitely ring true, but at least for me, and again, like I said, I'm going to sound absolutely crazy, but it feels like I was watching a play more so than a movie at certain points. And that, yes, it definitely got across the emotions that it was intending to. It, like, this entire movie is an exercise in making your audience as uncomfortable as humanly possible, which is good concerning the subject matter that it is. My problem with it, and I don't know if it's the dialogue, I don't know necessarily if it is the acting, because I like the performances, but it feels like I'm watching actors giving performances as opposed to actual real-life characters. And I wrote about this when I saw it a month ago, which is, I love Driver in the movie, but it's to a point where it almost feels like there's certain points where, you're right, it does feel like he is being portrayed like some of his asshole perspectives, but, like, compared to Scarlett's and, like, what she does in order to instigate it, where it's like, say what you will, she's the one who ends up getting a lawyer, even though they said they weren't going to.
Yup.
She hacks his phone, his emails, commits a felony, and to top it off, her whole thing is that, okay, so I'm living an unhappy life because I keep telling myself that by making my husband happy, that's going to make me happy, even though I'm lying to myself, right? And that would be all fine and good if we actually saw that. Here's the problem. From what I saw in the movie, from stuff that wasn't told to me, I didn't get a single beat of that. I got a situation of Driver kind of being unfairly shat upon for the whole movie, literally where he's forced into defense mode, and it felt very one-sided. And I can tell you the reason why. Because you know what gave Noah Baumbach the inspiration for this movie? His divorce from Jennifer Jason Leigh. And guess what? You think she had any input in this creative process?
No.
Not a damn bit.
So are you saying in terms of the fact that it's kind of all just like hearsay throughout the whole movie? Like we didn't see any of like what they were discussing.
What I'm trying to say is that it feels very one-sided because it feels like a very one-sided product. Where ultimately at the end of the day, it feels one-sided because because that's what's being presented to us. We could go back and forth about like hearsay, what back and forth. I'm just going based off of what the movie showed me, and based on my observation, that is what I saw. Yeah, it feels very one-sided in a situation where the emotion is clearly telling us that this is not one-sided. This is awkward. Divorce sucks, and it's a situation where kind of nobody wins overall.
It was like, well, there really is no winner in divorce,
right?
For the record. Which this movie does do a pretty good job of, I'll say that. It does paint divorce as, like, a really shitty thing, which, like, it is 99.9% of the time. Anyway, like, the scene where they have their, like, heated argument in his apartment and all that, like, one of the big parts of the whole movie and everything, like, just like what Dom said, I was thinking, like, yeah, I'm not saying that like Scarlett Johansson's character's lying about Adam Driver like doing all these things to her while they were married and stuff.
But it sure doesn't seem like there's a lot of stuff like, backing it up.
Yeah, but it's just like all of us, like, she's just like, yeah, you never cared about me and you always cared about yourself and all that stuff. And I'm like, right, that's fair. I'm sure he did. Because, like, except, like, it seemed like only in that argument, like, he was so obviously so self-absorbed. And I'm like, this seems like the only time in the whole movie that he's been so just blindly thinking of himself that he can't see like anything that she's going through. And that's the only time I saw that, like you said. So I'm like, yeah, I understand that like I should believe her and just kind of be like, right, he was a dick during their marriage because he was all about himself. But like right now it kind of just seems like you didn't know what you wanted. So you were just like, all right, I'll just go along with what my husband's doing because like we're having a good time. And then all of a sudden you're just like, I don't want this anymore. And I want to live in LA, and you said we would, and now we're not. And it's like, right, but we said we'd move to Europe and all this other shit, and we didn't do that either. And it's like, I don't know.
It feels like Baumbach is trying to imagine a previous argument he had with Jennifer Jason Leigh, who, by the way, is Daisy from Hateful Eight. And it feels like he's almost now. Keep in mind,
that's
again,
why they were a Hollywood couple.
And keep in mind, again, it's a Hollywood couple, so it's already going to be pretentious, and it's already going to have like a whole bunch of different things that none of us commoners would ever be able to relate to. But at least from what I'm seeing, it almost feels like Baumbach is trying to write the inner thought of what Jason Leigh is thinking without actually understanding what it is that she was feeling. And again, there's going to be some amount of genuine feeling that's going to be lost because, again, this is a Hollywood couple, and let's be real, there's only a certain amount of genuine feeling that really goes into that. I could be totally wrong, but I feel like most of what we've seen, those types of relationships emerge from business working relationships, right?
Yeah.
Well, let me just say this though.
Is that a bad thing, or do you just think it's not as genuine?
No, again, like I said, I'm speaking from an area that I literally no experience with.
Okay, so I understand that speculation, and I think that that's what we've been led to believe. I wouldn't want to venture too far down that rabbit hole personally because we don't know what he thought, and unless something comes out on record where he gives a reasoning behind why he did certain aspects of this film, I think all we can really talk about is what we saw from the actors in the story. But I will say that I don't think that speculation is unwarranted, although I don't really want to go down that territory.
Yeah, it's
but
got my brain
also
going all sorts of different ways.
Yeah,
now.
and I think like we got to center it back around the film. But I don't think that's bad speculation because I recently was in LA and I did not get a good vibe from most of the people I met. And you know, it is kind of like that. That was only a 2-week trip, so again, I don't think anyone here really has like enough of a scope to go down that alleyway. Your concern's also valid in that regard. Like we won't know what is right or wrong in this situation, but I will say this: Adam Driver did say in that fight that I keep referencing, where he punches a hole in the wall, that he wasted his 20s and he didn't really know what he wanted, but he thought he wanted her, and so the whole movie seems like they both don't know what they want. You know, they both seem like this explosive, volatile couple. So that's why I think that it is almost like chaotically beautiful how it escalates and gets to this point because they're so affected by everything around them. Like she thought she wanted something that was amicable and they could be friends and split, but someone got in her head so slightly, and so she went and saw this lawyer, and then this lawyer had a way of finding her vulnerability and coaxing her. Like I kind of thought the lawyer character was a bit of a manipulator herself. Nora, that was her name.
Yeah.
I mean, that's putting it lightly.
They both seem to be so affected by everyone around them, yet they're trying to present this like power, this powerful front. So to me, it kind of just seems like it was doomed to fail, and we're watching one of those, like, you know, and maybe that is what it's like. I mean, we're all artists and creatives. We know it's tough, and we try to show like this strength to the world, but it's hard. So I can empathize with that, but you know, like I don't want to like speculate too much into like what the writer was thinking. I just want to talk about the characters right now.
Yeah, well, real quick, I just want to say I felt like with that whole like them talking to lawyers and stuff, I felt like that scene, like when she first goes and talks to Nora, and then when he first and goes sees whatever Ray Liotta's character's name was, like first of all, Ray Liotta was amazing in this movie.
Oh, he was awesome.
He did one more scene, and that honestly is like his like top 10 best performances of all time.
He was great. What was I saying? Oh yeah, but it just felt like, especially like Adam Driver's character, like they keep talking about how he's so smart and talented and a genius, and like she's such this great actress and like this amazing mother. So like they're both smart human beings. But then it kind of felt like as soon as they stepped into those lawyers' offices, like they were complete idiots and they had never heard of a lawyer before and they didn't know that any of this stuff ever existed before. And they're like, wait, I have to get a lawyer. Wait, but she said, huh? But I have to. Why can't I? What?
Oh yeah, they were really bad clients for
and I'm
lawyers.
like,
Just
and
in
I'm
terms
like,
of
hold on.
in terms of
like,
talking to each
listen,
other.
I've
Yeah.
never actually spoken to like a lawyer formally before, and I, have never been like in a real court thing besides like a speeding ticket. So I'm not saying that I'm a legal expert by any means, but I feel like I understood everything that those lawyers were saying when they were like, huh? I have to what? Wait, why are we doing this? I'm just like, I thought you guys were geniuses.
And
like,
Andrew,
you literally just won almost $1 million
it did
for
seem
being
like
a genius.
they walked into the most obvious traps.
And Andrew,
throughout the entire film.
you just hit the nail on the head, which basically kind of, I want to bounce back, Chris, to your point. You were talking a lot about how, again, it feels like we're watching completely different characters at a certain point that don't go based off of the setup that we're led to believe. And this goes back to a previous point that we talked about in The Mandalorian. You know why? Because it broke the most basic rule of filmmaking. Show, don't tell. Everything we know about these characters is
a lot of
dumped
exposition.
on us in a giant
Yeah, and it's
exposition
just
dump
I was gonna
in
say
the
that.
first 20 minutes.
I was like, how is an Oscar movie going to start with narration
And
like this?
trust me, there's way too many of them that do that. Watch the movie that beat out Citizen Kane for Best Picture. It's 100% voiceover.
I don't want to.
Good. And that
First
hits
off,
the nail on
it's
the
in
point
black
where
and white, so
I've
yikes.
talked about this where voiceover to me is already a 50-50 thing.
Says the host of a fucking...
Voiceover to me is already 50-50 to me in movies and TV. I've seen it work.
Really? Why? I mean, I don't wanna-
Snatch,
why?
I enjoy to a certain extent. Wolf of Wall Street, I enjoy. Kiss Kiss Bang Bang,
Oh, I see.
enjoy.
You're defending
Well,
narration.
what about
right
Blade
now?
Runner? You need that narration.
That's the. You know what's funny?
Well, why
The
do you not like narration?
You want to know? Well, hold on. I'm getting to that. You want to know what's funny? In that instance,
Yeah,
I
hold
could
on.
care less about the narration in Blade Runner. I could care less about the Blade. You know why? Because I like narration that accentuates it, but doesn't distract from what I'm watching. I don't like narration that is expecting
Okay,
me
so
to
Blade
just
Runner.
tell me exactly everything that's going on when I'm just as easily seeing it. You know?
Okay.
How great would those montage
Because then it's just lazy. Because
Exactly.
you can't write
exactly.
them saying
how great,
anything.
How great would those montage scenes in the beginning have been if, rather than just, us hearing the words that they wrote about each other just told to us, how about, we actually see the relationship?
Yeah.
How about we actually see the goddamn build-up and
you've
see
opened the
them
can
being
now.
in love and seeing them fall apart and seeing them and what they don't like about
Yes.
each other, rather than having it be told to us? How about them
I mean, they
apples?
kind of showed, but they could have showed way more.
There we
Yeah,
go.
well, here's the thing. It's like that opening narration thing, as soon as you realize that, like, well, first when it was just Adam Driver, I was like, okay, so he's going to say all this happy stuff, and then it's going to all of a sudden show all the bad stuff because they're getting divorced, whatever. But then it went to her side. I was like, oh, okay, so we're going to go, like, back and forth, and then it just cuts, and you're like, oh, they're, like, reading something they wrote about each other in marriage counseling. That's kind of a cool idea. But then the entire montage, everything they say is the exact same thing that's on screen. Like, it's like, oh, she's such a good mother. She plays. So we see her in the yard playing with her son. With
She's
toys.
competitive.
You're like,
Monopoly.
oh, okay.
Exactly. Why do we
both
need
of
the
them
voiceover?
Both of them say they're competitive. So we see the exact same scene of them both losing
Playing
at Monopoly at two
yeah.
different moments. And
And
when
the kid
one
just
of
being
them,
like, yo, these guys are going to break the
when
fuck
one of
up.
them, and also, this is probably a
Play in the
nitpick, but in the scene, first it shows her losing at Monopoly, and she gets annoyed, and he's like, ah, ha, 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 and the son's like, ah, ha, 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 ha. And then it goes to him losing, and he's like, this is frustrating. And
Yeah.
he gets up, and she's
Yeah,
like,
he throws a plate against the wall.
and I'm
Not
like,
really,
hold on,
but-
hold on.
Also, again, that-
they're wearing the same clothes. This is the same game. So they both got annoyed and both think it's cute, but then like they're both gonna get frustrated in the same game.
Let's be honest, they both lost to an 8-year-old.
Not to mention the fact that, I'm sorry, no human being says, oh, this is frustrating after they leave when we're literally told that they're competitive. I'm sorry, but that's not what my rational brain
Yeah,
thinks
listen,
when I hear.
I know, Chris. I hope you don't take offense to this, but I feel like you're pretty competitive when it comes to most things,
Even at podcasts.
even at podcasts.
If you don't play to win, why are you playing?
right, so Chris is competitive, and
Not
not
fun.
once have I ever heard him like losing or struggling and been like, "Oh man, this is so annoying. Oh, I'm so frustrated. I'm so annoyed."
Well, we'll have to film Chris
Yeah.
losing at something.
I'm
and see
sorry,
what he
that's
says.
not good
Well-
writing. That's 3-year-old writing attempting to sound convincing.
That's thinking, this character's upset and frustrated. How do I convey that to the audience? I
Let's
don't know.
just have him say it.
I don't want them to get confused. I'm just going to have them say it. They have to know that he's frustrated.
All right. Well,
Because they've never been frustrated before playing Monopoly, so they'll never understand.
so obviously we're putting this under a microscope right now, but I really was into the performances, though.
Okay.
Like,
if we're talking about acting,
100%.
Adam Driver gave the best performance
Because-
I've seen in the last, 10 years.
Because I agree that
Yeah,
this
I liked a lot
was...
of the acting too.
I agree that this could have been your thesis for your senior year of like your bachelor's degree at film school writing wise, which isn't terrible, but it's also like, how is this up for an Oscar? I agree, and I can see that. But what I also saw was someone crying, a grown man crying, in a way that I've only ever seen people do in real life. I've never seen someone cry that accurately in a film, because that was real crying. That wasn't theater crying. That wasn't movie crying. That wasn't television crying.
I have.
The entire, and I, like, again, this is why you're the movie nerd, but I'm just saying, for me, as more of like the consumer host, that shit really resonated with me. I thought the performances were phenomenal. I thought Scarlett was great too.
Yeah, it's an acting showcase.
I would say
definitely.
Like
Nobody in here gives a bad performance.
This is the kind of movie that Adam Driver takes to show people he's more than Kylo Ren. I feel like actors get hyped when they get these kind of
scripts. You're
scripts.
gonna hate me when I say that I think that I actually like him more as Kylo Ren than in this movie. It's a great performance, definitely, but just in terms of like the character.
What time is it?
So you just like
love
Kylo Ren.
Oh, Kylo Ren's a fantastic character. He's probably one of the best Star Wars characters. Like,
you know what,
ever
guys?
created.
I think we got to call this one a little early.
Look,
I see how it is.
I honestly,
we're
like
getting into
Kylo
the bad
Ren.
opinion section.
I
of the
like
podcast.
Kylo Ren most of the time, but like
Segment.
this was. Well, I don't know about
We're
characters.
not here to
but
debate the merits.
But I do
want to
know what you guys thought. I want to know what you guys thought about
Listen,
the performances.
If I'm boiling it down like that, the things that were wrong with this movie were not any of the actors' faults.
Agreed.
Everyone that was in the movie, I think, did a great job, except, again, in that lawyer scene when he meets Ray Liotta or whatever, like, he does, like, Adam Driver does this thing where he's just like, all right. And, like, that scene I felt like was, like, the only scene where I was like, this acting seems weird. But everybody else was really good. But then also, like, the bad things were really just, like, I feel like, I guess it was the script and the editing. Something was wrong. Because it also just felt like there were moments where it was like, is this movie trying to be a comedy or is this movie trying to be a drama? Because there were, like, and I understand that, like, you want to, like, break tension and, like, make it, like, you know, real and stuff. But it's just, like, there were sometimes where I'm like, oh, wow, like, these people are in real life, they're arguing, they're trying to figure life out, like, nothing's perfect, like, this is great, and, like, really nitty-gritty. And then, like, the next scene is, like, this old man is old, and, like, he doesn't know what's going on, and it's funny, and Adam Driver's confused, and he's just like, oh, finally, this senile old man is the first smart person I've talked to. And I'm like, what? Like, I thought I was watching an Oscar movie. This seems like fucking Joe Schmo's, like, Horrible Bosses 3. I'm just like, what is going on now?
Yeah.
Like, how did we get to this point in the same movie? Like, it felt like I was watching two different movies. And then every scene with Scarlett Johansson's mom, I'm like, is this movie, this woman should not be, I'm sorry, I'm sure that woman has given great performances in other movies, but I'm like,
she has, yeah.
this doesn't seem like an Oscar performance. It's just like, oh, I just kind of the target
That's
lady
kind of how
from-
she always
from
acts.
SNL, and I just want to
Have you seen Jewel? Oh, wait, you guys have seen her before?
Yeah.
That's kind of how she
I
always
haven't.
acts.
I know.
Oh, this is probably because I don't watch SNL.
Well, here's the
Well,
thing,
she wasn't
though.
on SNL, but like she just
Oh,
reminds
what?
me of the target lady.
Oh, okay.
So what I want to
okay.
know is like, so I do think a few scenes overstayed their welcome, like you're saying, with certain characters
Oh, yeah,
and
this
whatnot.
whole movie was way too long.
Yeah, I could see that too.
A little
but
long.
like, if we are speculating heavily with good reason that Scarlett Johansson and Adam Driver will be up for the Oscar for, you know, best leading female and male,
And Laura Dern for supporting.
And if they
won,
won-
and I'd say that they all deserve it.
I think they all deserve it.
Not Laura Dern or
I
Scarlett
think-
Johansson.
I would
Driver,
agree.
maybe.
Driver
would-
for sure.
I think I'll be upset if Driver doesn't get it, because that was such a dynamic performance. It was up and down. It was fiery. It was mellow. It was concerning. It was everything. Johnny, what do you think?
Oh yeah, one thing that I just really liked about the writing and I guess kind of the acting too is just I feel like it portrayed the real like reasons why marriages fail, like in a certain aspect in terms of just how it's not just about fighting or like bickering or even just certain arguments. It's more just about the contempt that they have, and I thought that they did a really good job in illustrating that in the fights and just in the therapy sessions.
So did you like the film?
Yeah. Especially when they wouldn't even look at each other, like it just kind of showed that it's not just like bickering or like arguing or like going to bed mad at each other. Like it's about pure contempt and just hating the other person.
Definitely. And in that sense, that is again my favorite part of the film, going back to like when I saw it originally, is that it translated across the feeling of like being in a divorce. Like you, like at the very least, even with the certain lines and the setup of the characters and the certain character choices that don't necessarily make sense in terms of the script, at the very least, it makes you like understand it, like, wow, I actually feel like I am watching like a real divorce, like in real life.
I mean, I was very uncomfortable watching the majority of this
It's
film.
not fun, like at all.
And I can almost, I like, you know, this movie, you know, I only could imagine what that's actually like. So I got to ask, like, regardless of all the problems, based off what you just said, I thought that was very powerful. Like, it shows the contempt in such a real, tangible way. Like, I felt it. Do we think that this film, because some films are called important for reasons, right? Do we think this film has potential to be called important? Do we think that the problems diminish that? Do we think it could have? I want to know what we think about that, because contempt is a very strong word, and I felt it.
That kind of goes along with what I said earlier about how I just liked the message in terms of it just letting you know, like, kind of it lets you know what's important about families and like just marriages in general, and like I don't know, it kind of just showed like the bad side and like how bad things can get if you aren't careful. I also do like how the characters kind of realize that at certain times, like when he breaks down crying, like they kind of just realize what they're going through, and I don't know, that's something that I also thought was nice about the movie.
Yeah, I'd say yes and no. I'd say the overall ideas and themes of this movie will hold up, especially like as we'll see like how just relationships overall in general change and evolve over
Millennials.
time. But
Oh God.
yeah, right. But I will say that I would say for lack of a better word, the minutia of the film, and it sucks that I have to use that word, but like that's what it is that again, it's ultimately at the end of the day, I feel like I'm watching actors giving performances. I feel like I'm hearing lines that I would hear in like a play for somebody who doesn't know how to write, which sucks because this is not somebody who doesn't know how to write. This is the director and writer of The Squid and the Whale, Greenberg. Margot at the Wedding.
Madagascar 3.
Co-writer of Madagascar 3, which is my favorite of the three.
Arguably the best one.
Arguably. And I'm not saying that
I
ironically.
never
saw.
But I never saw it either.
Look,
Yeah.
Well,
But I know what you mean, Dom. I didn't mean to dilute that. I
as
do know
far
what
as
you're
it being important, I don't know. I really would like my dad to see it and then ask him about it, because he, is divorced and remarried. And like I was 10 when my parents got divorced, so like there was a lot I didn't know at the time, and probably still don't really know now about like the real nitty-gritty details. But obviously I know what it did to me. I saw what it did to my sister, and I saw what it did to both of my parents, and it was really confusing. And I feel like the kid just kind of felt like not present for any of it, and I know that they were trying to like keep him out of it, but like there's literally no way you can, because he's their child. And it just kind of felt like he was mostly unaffected. Like if anything, it was just like, oh, I'm moving, and like I don't want to go back to New York.
I mean, he's gonna be affected by it.
Yeah, I know, but like,
but yeah, I know what
there
you
was
mean.
never a point where
really
he's
focus
like,
in on what
there
he
was never
thought or
like
anything that.
why aren't you guys together, or
Yeah.
like
Right,
why do
I
I
wa-
have to move here, or like I'm
Right, because
confused.
that's
he
what you
didn't
hear in a
even-
traditional movie, and this movie
Yeah.
is kind of going out of its way to not do that.
I guess, but it was like,
But you still needed something emotional
Right,
yeah,
from
exactly.
it, right?
I'm saying like
I'm not saying it's a good thing. I'm just saying like, why the choice was made.
And I'm not saying I'm, the authority of divorce, and like I experience everything that divorce has to give someone to experience or whatever. But like personally, like, it seemed like what the couple was going through was like pretty accurate, where they like are on the one hand trying to figure out what they want for their own happiness, trying to figure out what their kid wants for happiness, and trying to figure out a way to amicably do that for all parties involved, which is probably one of the hardest things you could ever do in your life. But it just also seemed like the kid was just there. And like I definitely was not just there when my parents were divorced, and I was only 2 years older than this kid when it happened, and my parents arguably didn't like get at it like that because they weren't having like lawyers fight for them and stuff. So like if anything, this kid should have been like way worse than I was.
Did it feel like a situation of where it felt like it was the idea of what would happen if a kid was there, rather than actual writing from experience as if a kid had actually gone through that?
Yeah, it kind of just seemed like whoever wrote this movie was like, yeah, this kid is there and he's gonna, his life is gonna be affected, but like right now he's just kind of like chilling. And it's like, this kid would not just be chilling.
I guess that's why the movie's called Marriage Story, not Family Story.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, dude. Yeah.
When it should be called Divorce Story.
Well, I guess it was aptly named.
It's definitely just Marriage Story.
Yeah.
It's like they barely remembered the kid was there, except when the times when they were talking
Except
about how
when
much
they
they
heard
love
him-
being
yeah.
parents. But then all the time, it's like, oh, this kid is just a fucking
To be
problem.
honest with you, it kind of seemed like they were more concerned with their work than the child at
Oh,
most of the times.
1,000%.
Right.
I don't even
Also-
know why they had a kid.
And the kid didn't even
I was
care
waiting
about
for the
his
moment
dad
where
getting
they were like,
stabbed.
where they were like, you should have gotten an
Wait, you mean
abortion when I knocked you
accidentally
upside.
So listening to you guys speak for the past few minutes,
grinding halt.
listening to you guys speak for the past few minutes, I've kind of realized that what I really like about this movie, I liked so much that I had a little bit of my blinders on to how much it actually is flawed. We've said it. I don't want to go down this path again. We've all agreed the performances are pretty incredible, but there is so much that is lacking that I do think that this movie is really just like a 2019 film. which is unfortunate.
Yeah, when
this
you
does
asked if it was
not feel
important.
like a timeless movie. Like
Yeah,
we can say how like overdramatic and untrue Kramer versus Kramer is, but at the end of the day, I have a feeling a lot more people are going to remember Kramer versus Kramer.
Well, that's
over
taught in
this
film
movie.
schools.
Yeah,
I saw that in class.
there you go.
Yeah, like
And-
when I said I like the message, I didn't mean that I think it's going to be a message that like is remembered in like 5 or 10 years. I
Right.
just mean like I currently just liked the message in the movie.
And-
Well,
that-
listen. As soon as Lorde won Best Rock Album, I gave up believing any award show that's on a major TV network.
I 100%
agree.
could not agree
It's
with you more.
all
That was
skewed.
me.
Didn't
even
That
know
was me
she
for the
won Best
Emmy.
Rock
Also,
album.
when I realized that Justin Bieber like never won a Grammy, and I'm like, listen, I'm not saying that he's prolific, but the other people that have won Grammys, how has Justin Bieber not won a Grammy?
Yeah.
It's all pay to play, and I do have to say this because I don't want people to think, since I was the one who like asked how we felt about the kid in the beginning, like screaming at their computers right now, like he didn't call the cops when his father slit his wrist the wrong way. Like, yeah, okay, the kid was pretty pointless. Like
The
he
kid's
wasn't the brightest
on,
kid.
The
like,
dad's on the floor, gripping his arm, trying
And
to
he just
stop
says he's
blood
tired.
from coming out. And the kid's like, "Oh, Dad, why are you?" I felt like I was watching like a Tim Burton or like a Wes Anderson.
Not to mention, there was blood like on the door
Yeah.
and definitely on
Literally
the ground.
dripping stains everywhere.
And there's a box of bloody Band-Aids on the counter that he fucking passed.
I mean, yeah, when you're 8, that's like second grade at that point. Do you think you would notice
okay,
your
yeah.
parent was
Also,
laying on the
I was
kitchen
in
floor?
third
hold on,
grade when
let's
I was
talk
young.
I
about
would be
this kid
scared.
real quick for a second. First, he's good at math and he can't read. Then all of a sudden, he's like, "I don't like math," and you're like, "All right, I'm starting to think that this kid like is on the spectrum or something." Like
Strong possibility.
I just feel like I know absolutely nothing about this kid except that his parents like probably shouldn't have had a kid before they achieved what they wanted to in their careers, because obviously they can't handle both.
Oh yeah, they were very immature just in terms of their
and then that
marriage.
scene where they're like, "Hey, like my mom has to help me pay for Nora," and like, "Yeah, I'm going broke paying for lawyers." It's like, then why are either of you using a lawyer?
it said a
How
lot
much
about the
time-
It's
young couple.
completely
How much
counterintuitive
time-
to its own thing.
How much
And-
time is in between?
I mean, it was a
all
very
these
inconvenient
breaks?
divorce with one being in New York and one being like
Yeah,
it
yeah.
just
and then
sucked,
also
but-
like at the very like that last, there's a whole bunch of little time skips that like you're not clear on how much time has passed. Sometimes I'm like, oh, maybe it's been years, but then I'm like, but this kid has not aged a
Not at
single
all.
Still doesn't
day.
know math.
Yeah.
A single day.
And, like-
the only thing that changed is that he got a little bit better at reading.
And-
But also, on the other hand, it's like during these cuts, it's like they obviously go through things that change him at least a little bit. And I was like, I kind of want to know what those things are, but you never find out. And they don't even tell us. But then all the way at the end, like he shows up and she's like, "Oh, hey, what's going on?" And they all seem kind of like at terms with their current situation. And then he's like, "Hey, I got this thing at UCLA. I'm going to be around." And she looks like he just told her that, like, "I want to marry you again." And she's like, "Oh, yeah, no, everything's fine." And then he reads that thing with the kid, and then she comes in and cries, and then, like, that's it. And I'm like,
I just kept thinking
and
they're
I was like,
so
wait,
stupid.
so is she upset? Is she not upset? Like,
They
she,
obviously still love each other to some level.
Well, the one thing
They're
I will
just
say
stupid.
is that does factor
Yeah.
into I feel like real life divorce, because I have seen like real life divorce. I'm thankfully have never been a product of divorce. I'm very, very thankful of that. But the one thing I will say is that I have seen, and I am actually friends with a few divorced couples, and I have seen like situations where obviously it's not the same. It'll never be the same as it was when they were married. But like, especially the ones that have kids, and the ones that I do know do still have kids. Definitely like, especially the ones that are like working together and still trying to make a life and understand and make their kid understand that they still love each other. Like there is still some genuine feeling there. And so in that sense, I actually bought that. That was probably one of the most believable parts of the movie to me, was that final scene where it's like, yeah, they do kind of love each other. Obviously not the same way as they did before, but at the very least they're willing to work together for the sake of their kid. That was believable to me.
yeah, but
At that
I feel
point, it's
like,
almost too late. The kid's world is already destroyed.
Right, but-
yeah, but also like I feel like, and again, I'm only 26. I haven't lived all my life. I'm not a genius. I'm not a guru. But I just feel like that's kind of true with like almost every breakup. Is like, because at one point, obviously, unless you have like those quote unquote crazy exes, in which case you probably don't feel this way. But most of the time, it's like at least this person was someone that you cared about a lot, at least enough to be like, I want to date you. So that's like enough. And then afterwards, it's like, even though those feelings aren't there, they were there, and you at least remember them. So it's like there's always something there, because once you take that step into like romance and intimacy and all that shit, like things are changed forever, whether they stay intimate or not. So that I was just kind of like, well, yeah, they were married. Obviously, they're gonna always have feelings for each other. So that was just kind of like maybe that was my problem. It wasn't that I didn't want the kid to be a part of the story. It was more just like it seemed like they were telling the story of this couple trying to get like divorced, but they were both babysitting the same kid.
Kind of.
Like, it never felt like, yeah, they were always like, oh, but I just want what's best for Henry. And it's like, yeah, I get that, but like...
Again, a lot of talking about what they supposedly wanted rather than actually focusing on what the film was really about, which, again, is them realizing that their divorce at the end of the day is going to affect this kid, whether he realizes it or not, whether they realize it or not. And they clearly, despite talking about it a lot, don't realize the full effect of it until the very last shot of the film. I think that's the only moment of the movie which finally drives that point home, which is good. I feel like that's where it should be. But again, I feel like in a much more traditional film, these problems wouldn't be here. And that's fine and all, because again, this is not a traditional film. But at the same time, kind of to go back to the original Oscar points, this was, again, we can't like scoot around it. This film was pitched as like being the Oscar movie. Like, everybody was talking about it from the minute they first heard about this movie. And in terms of its Oscar potential, I'd say honestly and I loved all the cast members and all the actors, but the only one that I would say that I would personally nominate is Adam Driver. And I don't know if that's just because of what I enjoy about him as an actor, what I saw from him in this movie, getting more believability from him than a lot of the other characters, with the writing that he was given. I don't know what it is, but just whatever it was about him, just he gave off this relatability that I feel like none of the other characters had. And I feel like that is ultimately what pushed him over the edge. I feel like with Scarlett Johansson, again, very shallow character that, again, is just reciting dialogue that doesn't back up her character flaw. Alan Alda, like you said, doddering old man. Ray Liotta, great in 2 scenes of the movie. Laura Dern, again, being touted as the Oscar winner. Number one, this is going to be, again, kind of her Lifetime Achievement Award, because we've already said it before. The Oscars love doing this. DiCaprio with Revenant, Gary Oldman with Darkest Hour, Pacino with Scent of a Woman. The Oscars love doing the Lifetime Achievement Award, where they know that they get a big famous actor that's been nominated a bunch of times, been snubbed a bunch of times, and then they give him for a performance, which is usually good. But hey, compared to that previous body of work, it really feels just like a consolation prize. And that's exactly what it felt like here. And on top of that, this isn't even the first type of Laura Dern performance that I've seen, because I already saw that type of performance from her in the second season of Big Little Lies earlier this year. And at the very least, that was a more entertaining performance, because in that scene, she's chewing scenery like I chew a piece of beef jerky.
Yeah, I mean...
I want to know how you chew a piece of beef jerky.
We don't need to get into that now. It was a metaphor,
It's just like...
Actually, a simile, but
this
whatever.
movie, like thinking back at it after watching it, it just kind of feels like he didn't sit down and he didn't sit down with like okay, I have a story I want to tell and I'm going to choose to make a movie. It was like, I'm going to write a movie that's going to win an Oscar. What scenes do I need to put in there? Let's see.
I'm going to write a movie about like breakup that might win an Oscar.
We need to get people feeling. All right, let's get a family and let's break them up, because that's relevant and that's sad and people go through that. All right, let's get long scenes of almost uncut dialogue of them just being open and honest and saying things that
and
girls
like
post
a
on Tumblr.
half-hour montage in the
half-hour montage at the beginning, of like, oh, let me remember like how he was, but also like,
I was just saying that's very fucking true.
yeah,
The half-hour montage in the beginning.
yeah, and it's like that scene where she first goes to Nora and she's like walking, and like the scene is set up so nice, which made me so sad. Like, she's standing there, she was crying, she gets up, she goes into the bathroom, and it doesn't like cut, and she's in the bathroom, she comes out, like, I was like, all right, this looks really cool, and I like this. But like everything she's saying, I'm like, it just feels like you don't care about what you're saying. You're just like, this is a greeting card that girls will post on their Instagram story and be like, mood. I'm like, but when is it actually an actual mood? Because it never is. And then it was like, okay, we also need that, but we don't want people crying the whole time.
And then when it does, it doesn't support at all what we're actually seeing
exactly.
on screen.
And then like, let's make them laugh a little bit. But the only thing that this movie was missing to be a true, just like, Oscar, please give me the Oscar, was that this wasn't based on a true story of someone's really hard life.
I can understand that.
Which it already basically is, because we know for a fact that Baumbach based this off of his real life divorce.
Yeah, and it's like,
well,
and if
it was never said, so I think that discredits what Andrew's saying. But I know
that might not be the case. But if that is the case, then he basically just wrote a movie that makes it look like he was this troubled genius that was married to a really talented actress, and she just didn't know what was going on, and he was just too much of a genius to really realize. And it was like, we both had our faults. Mine was I was a genius, and hers was that she knew nothing.
Look at the ego on that guy, huh?
One-sided much?
Well, and I'm like, okay, so you're just like when they were doing that fake interview thing where it's like, what are your flaws? I care too much. Is that a flaw? It's like, what's your flaw? I'm a genius.
I will say this. I actually agree with pretty much most of what you just kind of deduced for us there,
and I
Andrew.
didn't even go to college.
He didn't even go to college. Well, you did for like a week, but
Community
we don't
college.
need to get into that.
College.
Anyways, and that's not
He's
putting him
right.
on blast. Don't let the system make you choose your lives, kids.
True.
Anyways,
Don't be the system, buck the system.
Unless your parents are giving you free rent and that's what you have to do is go to college. Do that.
Yeah, then definitely do what your
Do that
parents
and
are
work
telling
on
you.
your art in your bedroom. But, the last thing I want to say before we all go around, give our out of 10, our star ratings, not out of 10, sorry, and give like our closing thoughts is, I felt very uneven during that scene where she walks in there mid-fight and she's off screen, but Adam Driver's sitting there in the bathroom, or her mother, sorry, it's her mother, and she takes a pee on screen, because every time, and there was a few other times in this film where she would walk off screen and the other actor in the scene with her would be in the hallway of the bathroom or in the bathroom, I was just afraid we'd get more pee sounds because that sound design was too good, and I didn't like that, and I thought they were fucking with us,
Damn,
man.
you must have
because
PTSD
I was like,
nightmares when you watch a
I don't-
Kubrick movie. Then
I don't like associating the feelings of release with that tension, and I think he did a great job, and I'm not fucking just like doing some joke right now. Like, I swear to God, that dichotomy, that contrast was very real and very unnerving, and I'm glad we only got that in the beginning because I was on my goddamn toes.
I feel like
every
this is
time
like a.
she
you wanna-
walked
do you
into
wanna
that
talk about
bathroom.
something, man?
right, I was
This
about to
seems
say,
kinda
what's
personal.
what's the death scene in Full
What-
Metal Jacket? Those
just-
bathroom scenes
Dude,
galore.
what
in
happened?
that.
What happened to you in the bathroom?
It's like, Chris, do you want to talk about this? Do you need help?
Edit point. I just don't. I get it. Like, I feel like all these young filmmakers think like, oh, cool. Like, how do we make this shit like 2019? Well, you gotta have the bathroom sounds, and you gotta have like the slit up the wrist and see him bleeding super
Right,
crazy.
and even by 2019
let's-
standards,
Let's
it's like,
fucking amp
what?
it up. Like, I'm sick of that shit.
Yeah, that's
You
like
don't
that
need it.
literally
You
felt
don't
like
need
that
it in
was
movies.
It just
probably the
feels
most
like-
amateurish scene of this whole movie. Like that felt like a scene where it's like, oh, I'm about to graduate college, and I need a scene that's gonna spruce up my thesis. Like Chris,
Yeah.
that's the thing. I know you've used that argument a lot,
Like when
compared
Sean
to, like, a lot of
Conran's
Disney
film,
stuff, but
Punch
this
the
is probably
Girl.
the first time where I actually felt that, where it's like, ooh, how do I add more attention to my thesis? I know, let's have him accidentally slit his wrist. That'll amp up the tension and
what
not
did they
grind
do?
into a whole.
That
Exactly, exactly.
I was
What
just
did
gonna
that
say
add
that.
narratively?
What was the point of
Yeah,
that?
nothing happened after that. It was
And
just,
why
what-
have a knife joke
Bless you.
with your
At
fucking
all.
family? Yeah,
First,
why
I
have
mean,
a
I
knife
get
joke?
it.
All.
I get it because it was like, sure, like maybe that night didn't go perfect, but it was okay. And it was like, all right, so he's just like, all right, let me just put this to rest. The knife trick is just like I take this down, I pretend to cut my arm and whatever. But
oh,
then he
whoops,
does.
I accidentally
and it's
cut
like,
my arm.
And it's like, okay, now that's like
Totally set up and pay off.
yeah, and it's like, okay, I get it. Now it's like, oh no. Just when she thought that like I was gonna do a good job, now she's like, oh, this dude's crazy because he cut his arm, and now he's fiddling with shit, and he's gonna bleed on me, and now it's like, oh. But then you never hear what happened with the visit. You don't hear about who did well, who
No.
did bad. You don't see Scarlett's visit. You don't know if he actually got a good grade on that or not. It was just like that scene didn't even need to be in the movie, and it was just one of those scenes again where like when they're at dinner and stuff, it was just like you know what Oscar movies need? You need that scene that's just a scene of real life, but you can tell that there's emotion.
All right, I really
You're
like that.
And you're
impression.
like, what? Wait, real life and emotion? Wow, hold on. Give them all the awards. I didn't know you could do that.
And-
I've never felt that once in my entire fucking life.
98-year-old Academy Award voter, and I see a guy accidentally slice his wrist. I'm like, that.
Right, but he
acting.
slices
And while
his
we're on
wrist
that-
because of how good of a dad he is, and wow.
Yes.
Wow.
And while we're
wow.
on that
Bravo!
subject-
Bravo! Give him the
How good
Oscar!
of a dad
While
he
we're
is.
on that subject, to just before we close it, to bring it back to what we opened up this film with and sort of started really dissecting this thing and figuring out our stance on it, that scene wasn't even show don't tell. Because he was saying what he was doing as he was doing it. And
Literally.
the only reason he showed it was because he made an accident. So that's how much of a fucking fail this film was.
Oh my
outside
gosh.
of everything
You said
but the
you loved
acting.
It like 10 minutes.
Was
I'm just saying-
and you're surprised at this.
And
why?
I'm just saying that if we're staying true to what we've dissected on this conversation,
Okay.
now I don't actually feel that way that dramatically, but I'm
just
just
think
sort
it's
of
funny,
accenting
okay.
a point for people who maybe didn't go to film school and realize how much that is preached to you. It is. It's preached to you a lot. That's why I did that.
I've even heard that a lot, and I didn't go to film school.
Exactly, but like we're on the artistic side of things, you know, we can't never assume anything is what Grandpa
I
says.
mean, I feel like that should just be a thing in life. Never assume anything for
Well,
film school or
Well, you
art
know
school or
what? You
anything
know what
like
happens
that.
when you assume.
I don't explain.
You're usually right.
Oh, okay, cool.
I won't say
According to Austin.
Yeah, never heard that one before.
I won't say which political party is wrong for assuming, but one of the two has to be. Anyways,
one of them has to be wrong.
Just
you can't
by
both be
pure
right.
logic standpoint. So,
with that being said, let's all go around. I think our guests should go first. Closing statements. What you think about the movie on this show? As you know,
5 stars.
5 stars, of course. Johnny knows. What a fucking pro, man. Please,
5
sorry,
stars
I cursed
meaning
mine.
I'm a
really
veteran
good. 1
of
star
these
meaning
professional
bad.
in the house here.
And Johnny, I want to say we have a goddamn time having you on this podcast. And I
thank
say
you.
goddamn.
I can't wait to be
Because he said
back on the next
goddamn
one.
Twice, really emphasizing the point.
Well,
You
because
know
it was
that
in
now
the
that
movie.
you
It was
said that,
a-
my dad's not going to listen to this episode.
It was a callback to the movie. They say goddamn. It was a little thing for a minute. You don't remember that?
My
All right,
dad's
whatever.
not going to care.
Johnny.
Yeah, I don't know. I enjoyed it. Like I said, I really liked the message behind it. I liked a lot of the acting. I liked how it was shot. But I agree that I don't think it's. I don't see it as being a very timeless film in that much of any sense. So I'll probably say 3.5 stars.
And since we brought it up so much, do you think that these performances, specifically like the big two, do you think they're worthy of getting the Academy Award for whatever that's worth?
Yeah. I think so. Maybe not as much Scarlett Johansson, but yes, I agree.
Okay. Andrew, by the way. That's Andrew.
Okay. So this is out of 5 stars, right?
Yeah, but you can do like halves, point threes.
I would say overall, I'm gonna give the movie a 3 out of 5. 3 stars out of 5.
Okay.
Adam Driver deserves to
generous.
win all the awards for pretty much the rest of his life. And because of this movie, I'm probably going to see pretty much any movie that he ever does for the rest of his career.
The dead don't die from this year. Much of great performance.
He was
from
in
him.
Madagascar 3.
Oh, sick. I'm good. Wow, I got to check that one out. Sounds like we watched the wrong Bomback movie.
Right?
There were definitely a lot of basically when I realize I'm watching a movie while I'm watching a movie, that's when I'm like, all right, maybe there's some things that are distracting me from this movie, and that's when like I get annoyed. And that's kind of partly this movie. As far as like the divorce part of it, I felt that for the marriage side of it, it did a pretty good job of showing, the shitty side of divorce. For the kid part, it pretty much showed almost nothing, because every part that was like, oh, this is going to affect the kid, it was only the parents being like, well, this is going to affect Henry, and Henry's life is going to be like this, and this person's going to come and interview us, and they're going to talk to Henry, and now Henry's going to be affected. And it's like, okay, you keep talking about it. Has anyone asked Henry about how he feels about his parents
even
getting
is
divorced?
Henry?
Who the hell is Henry? I'm not even sure. He's been 8 years old for the past 2.5 years of this movie.
Very true.
Well,
It's like Peter Pan.
Pokemon's been doing that for like the last 20. Ash Ketchum
Yeah.
has been 10 years old for the
So,
last 20 years. So.
Part of me wants to give this movie a 1 because of all the problems in it, but
you do also
performances are
have to acknowledge
really
that some of those
good.
nitpicks.
Adam Driver's great. Scarlett Johansson, I definitely not as good as Adam Driver, but definitely still good. Definitely still very good. Laura Dern was I don't know. She didn't do bad, but I don't think it's worthy of an Oscar. Ray Liotta should win an Oscar just because. I think just in spite of
Goat.
the rest of this movie. And I think that the cinematography was awesome. And honestly, the score, I'm going to be honest, I don't really remember any of it, but there was never a point where I was like, this music's weird, man. I was just like, all right, this music's pretty cool. But I don't remember any of it, so take that how you will. So I'd say overall 3 out of 5.
To get into my final thoughts,
Also, this movie should not win Best Picture, and
yeah,
if it does, then every award show is rigged, and I'm never watching another one ever
first
again.
off, the awards are already rigged by nature, and the Oscars are only a few years away from becoming their own streaming service. So the awards are already defunct. Oh, absolutely, no question. Okay. It's the only way that they're going to survive, and the people in Hollywood have to continue the illusion that
kidding,
film
that's
now
everything.
is important. So they have to. But even though it hasn't been ever since Netflix came along and made everything disposable. But yeah, overall, look. The emotion from this movie that I got from this movie felt very genuine, and the performances, particularly from one over the others, were very good. But overall, yeah, I basically agree with everything you guys have said before. Again, I feel it does make me feel a little bit validated, because literally I feel like everywhere I'm turning, people are praising this movie as a masterpiece, and I would literally love to know. I'm be like, in a year, are you guys gonna remember a goddamn thing from this movie?
I was
'Cause
really
can tell you
nervous.
this, I'm not gonna remember a god. Maybe I'll remember Adam Driver singing that song at the end. That was legitimately great. And I'll remember him accidentally slitting his wrist because it was the most unintentionally
so
hilarious scene. And yeah, now what I will say is that this film did give me a little bit of PTSD flashbacks to my first breakup. And I would say that in terms of being a better breakup movie than another certain A24 movie that came out over the summer, which I just thought, unlike this movie, which did have some good merits, that movie was just a steaming pile overall. But what I will say is that all the rest of this movie, yeah, again, Baumbach, if this is like his amateur effort, if this is like 1995 and this is the first thing we're seeing from him and not kicking and screaming, then that's fine. But this is the guy who, again, I reiterate, Squid and the Whale, Greenberg, Madagascar 3, Francis Ha. That was the one that I was forgetting. Francis Ha, the one that he did with his now wife, Greta Gerwig, who is also being hailed as like the next greatest thing since sliced bread, even though Lady Bird was just okay. And, yeah, overall, I gave this movie 4 stars when I saw it. But yeah, honestly, after dissecting this movie, yeah, this is a 3.5 for me. This is a 3.5, yeah. And also, if this wins Best Picture over Parasite, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, Jojo Rabbit, The Irishman, or Uncut Gems, which I still think has a shot at being nominated, I'm gonna friggin' like lose it. Like, just saying.
Yeah, I'm gonna buy like a pumpkin for you.
I was so nervous that I was gonna be the only one who didn't like this movie.
Oh wow, that's
so
interesting.
I'm really happy with how this past conversation has gone.
Okay, well,
Chris, what are your final thoughts?
Thanks for asking. Well, first off, I thought that song that Adam Driver sings at the end is the most Broadway song I've ever heard. Like,
yeah, I thought that was really weird.
Which is fine, considering the fact that, he is
how did we
Broadway
get here?
director.
I mean,
So
yeah,
that
I know.
makes sense.
No, he could have been a Broadway director, but yeah, I mean,
it came to that.
Yeah, too soon, dude. You heard him. It got closed.
it's just
That's
like
right.
those kind of melodies are the melodies that like you hear as a child, and you either pick up an electric guitar or you like hardcore hit theater because they're so polarizing. And I thought that was like just a weird song choice.
And somehow I grew up on Cats and picked up a bass guitar. What happened?
Well, but Cats is like.
You're also just like an odd
That
choice,
wasn't an
just in general,
iconic-
Andrew, so...
What I'm trying to say is that didn't feel like an iconic Broadway piece. Whatever. That just a bad joke turned into a little extra segment. So what did I think about this film? Well, I'm going to tell you guys right now that I'm giving it a 4 because I think that Adam Driver's performance was just so good that it kind of doesn't matter that there are all these problems that we have with it to me. And I say that because I think this was obviously the kind of movie that it seems like if I was an actor who was in a major motion picture blockbuster trilogy and was obviously always being talked about, I'd want to show people that I could also act. And I'd pick a movie like this, and I would think to myself that, like, this is a great script, but I would, obviously expect to be failed in it by the public, but I think he did the opposite of what I think anyone would do in this role. I think that this is the kind of movie you take that is like Hayden Christensen after like the original trilogy. It's either going to break you or make you. And I think that this solidifies the fact that like, exactly. Yeah, sorry. And he has chops. And so for me, like that was very proving. I also thought that she was awesome, and I didn't care about anyone else because of how awesome they were. And I have to look at this movie through such a telescope because I felt so uneven and so like nervous the entire time watching this film, uncomfortable even, because of how good the performances were. So I forgive all the other stuff, but there was some creative camera shots, and I honestly kind of liked the score. I thought it didn't take away from anything, and I don't think the score always has to add something.
Oh,
so,
and 1917. Yeah. That was the other one I forgot about. 1917. That's definitely one that it's like if this gets that over that freaking movie, which we'll hit that when you guys watch that. Ooh, man. Huh.
So yeah, in conclusion, I thought it was a fine film. My 4 is heavily weighted on the performances, but we'll see as I mellow with it on my letterbox. You guys can check out where it really stands in a few days. But for now, first impressions, I'm gonna give it a 4. And with that being said, thanks for being a part of the show. Thank you to Johnny Manna, who has
You're
music.
welcome.
Where can they find your music and check all that out?
You could find my music on Spotify, Johnny Manna. That's JohnnyManna, and also on all social media services at Johnny Manna, or sometimes it's _Manna, which is just Twitter actually, but everything else is just Johnny Manna. So,
Beautiful.
Yeah, thank you.
Dude, thank you. This was fun. I'm glad you guys
Hell yeah, dude.
talked
Glad to
to
have
us
you guys
for this
back.
kind of
Thanks
movie.
for
This is
coming,
an awesome
Johnny.
reunion special.
And now Andrew, you want to plug some shit?
Yeah, if you guys haven't checked out an anime series called Naruto, I highly recommend it.
It is
But
my
also, I'm in a band called The Stash that Chris is in, that you can check out
This Chris.
at The Stash NY on all social medias, and on Spotify, just The Stash. Also, I'm on another podcast, also with Chris, because I don't really have a lot of other friends.
This Chris.
It's called Talkin with Andrew and Chris.
This Chris.
I'm sensing a trend here.
We do a lot of
It is
what
the
this
sister
one
podcast.
does, except not as much about the movies and TV, and more about whatever our guest is talking about. So definitely check that out on the Anchor app and wherever else you get your podcasts.
Yeah, and with that
Rip
being
off my
said,
line, Andrew.
Also, if you have the game Deep Rock Galactic on Steam, hit me up because I need more people to play that game with. It's really fun.
and with that being said, you can also find this show at Talkin TV, anywhere that matters. You know the deal. We're on Facebook, Instagram. We're not on Twitter because that shit's dying soon.
Right, done.
And we're on all the major distributors: Spotify, Apple, Talkin, TALKIN TV. Dumb. How do we like to end this show?
Oh, you know it. Watch more fucking movies.